Talking Tolkien Podcast, Episode 5, The Silmarillion, Chapter 2, of Aulë and Yavanna. Alright, go ahead. Hi everyone, John Carswell here. Welcome to the Talking Tolkien Podcast, your conversational guide to Middle-earth and the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. On this episode of the podcast, we will be discussing the second chapter of the Silmarillion proper, of Aulë and Yavanna. We're going to learn some very interesting things about the origins of dwarves, eagles, and ents. Enjoy. Alright, here we are. Time for another Tolkien podcast, Talking Tolkien. Episode 5. I can't believe we're already 5 episodes in, Greta.
I was just thinking the same thing. 5? I thought it was at least only 4.
Wait, you thought it was at least only 4?
I thought...
Isn't that an oxymoron?
At least only... It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I thought we were only on 4.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. When I talked about it earlier tonight, you said...
Yeah.
You said, wait, is this episode 4? And I said, no, it's episode 5.
And I was like,
your mind was blown.
Totally. I was like, whoa, when did that happen?
It happened when we recorded episode 4.
I guess it did.
Yeah. All right. So, this is Talking Tolkien, the official podcast of TrueMyths.org. You can follow us on Twitter at Tolkien Wisdom and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrueMyths. And those are in the show notes. And if you go to TrueMyths.org, it's all there anyway. So head on over and check us out over there. So, Greta, have you read my book on Beren and Luthien yet?
No. No, but I want to.
It's been like...
That's what I said last time, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, but
it's starting to sound kind of insincere.
Well, it probably would help if I didn't have like 3 other books in addition to the Silmarillion that I'm trying to read right now.
Yeah.
It
sounds kind of ungrateful.
Ungrateful.
Quite frankly. Yeah.
It does sound a little. However, like I said last time, I feel like I've read a good part of it because I read essentially the first draft or kind of the brainchild of it last year.
Yeah.
When you were writing that paper.
Yeah.
For the conference.
I think you used that excuse last time.
I did. Yep.
Yeah.
I did.
Just going to keep milking that for all it's worth, huh?
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully, hopefully you'll get around to reading my book, Tolkien's Requiem, concerning Beren and Luthien, which is available on Amazon for download on your Kindle.
Shameless, John. Shameless.
And if you'd like to read it and you don't have a Kindle or you don't use Kindle or you want a paper copy, let me know because eventually I hope to make a paper copy and also put it in other formats. But It just came out a few weeks ago, so for right now it's just in the Kindle format. All right, so last time we started doing something called Talking Tolkien to kick off, to kind of kick things off.
Mm-hmm. Reminisce a little bit.
Yeah, wherein we looked back over the long history of the Talking Tolkien podcast and
Episode
just
5.
Discuss some.
When did that happen?
What? 5?
5. It's like the second magic number.
Man,
after 3.
Oh, after 3. Yeah, that's
after
right.
3, yeah.
There's a song about that.
There is a song.
The magic number.
Did you know that it's actually originally a Schoolhouse Rock song, which I didn't know about Schoolhouse Rock until last year, which probably dates me a little bit, but
pretty sure everybody knows that.
That it's a Schoolhouse Rock song? Well,
I'm just kidding. I didn't really know that.
I was going to say, I heard it first in not as a Schoolhouse Rock song. I heard it in a different format. But it is a Schoolhouse Rock song. And it's a great way to learn how to count by 3s. Mm-hmm. In case anybody out there wants to learn how to count by 3s really quickly.
Right on.
Schoolhouse Rock.
There's 3 great lords of the Valar.
That was a really nice transition,
yeah.
John.
There's 3 great lords of the Valar. Hey, you remember last time I talked about getting this party started, and then we talked about Wayne and Garth Wayne's World. You know what's cool? Between then and now, they've been doing this like SNL 40th anniversary celebration.
Yeah.
And so I guess they did a Wayne's World reunion on one of them, and I actually saw it.
No
and
way.
It was so great to see those. I loved Wayne's World, man. I wasn't a fan of everything Mike Myers did, but I really loved Wayne's World. I thought it was just the perfect pairing, those two. And they always kept it very like lighthearted, but it was always pretty funny, and I don't know, just like the characters. So that was kind of cool. We spoke about Wayne's World, and then they're just, lo and behold, out of the blue, it's like the universe was listening to us or something. It's kind of amazing.
That's really cool. I'll have to go back and look for that on YouTube.
Yeah. But until then, we'll just keep partying on.
Party on, John.
Party on, Greta. All right. So I have to ask you, what do you think was the best episode so far?
The best of the Talking Tolkien?
Yeah, not of Wayne's World.
Okay.
Of
I was
Talking
like,
Tolkien.
There were episodes of Wayne's World? Did I miss something? There was only 2 movies, right?
Yeah, but there was all kinds of episodes on Saturday Night Live.
On Saturday Night Live, that's true. Those were skits.
They were like 5
those
minutes
aren't really
long or
episodes.
something.
Those are skits.
Right.
Okay, I just had a mini panic attack where I thought maybe I'd missed something huge and important, and my life would be completely different now if I hadn't. But anyway, okay, Talking Tolkien podcast, best episode yet. I think. I think I really liked the Ainulindalë one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I feel like I understood that chapter the best, and I probably sounded the smartest in that episode.
Oh, okay. So you little vanity there, huh? Something smart.
Something smart. Yeah.
Let me tell you, you didn't sound that smart.
I didn't sound
I'm just kidding. You sounded pretty smart. I'm just giving you a hard time. All right. So the Ainulindalë one. Okay.
I also like that name the best.
Well, yeah, in Ainulindalë, there's just so much. Man, there's so much going on in that one. Quenta, though, there's a lot going on in that one.
There was. Well. It was honestly kind of a toss-up between the Ainulindalë and the Quenta, but I really liked the Ainulindalë.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot going on. The chapter we're doing tonight, the Aulë and Yavanna chapter, is it's like the shortest thing we've read so far, but it's still dense. It's still very dense. There's a lot of good stuff in it.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting.
So, do you have a favorite moment of the past 4?
A favorite moment of the past 4? Favorite moment? I'm sure I do. Golly gee, I can't.
You know what my favorite moment was?
Yeah, what was your favorite moment?
I liked the DeLorean moment.
Did you like the DeLorean moment?
That?
I do remember that.
Because I love Back to the Future.
I love Back to the Future.
It's another one of those things I love. Like Wayne's World and Back to the Future.
It's hard to beat Back to the Future, man.
It is.
That is just.
There was just
brilliant.
I've said this often. Like there's that period of movies. There's just this time in the mid '80s where like pop culture was just killing it. You think about it, you go back and it's like, think about the movies that came out between 82 and 88. Right in there, and Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, Karate Kid. I haven't researched this, so I'm sure I could name a ton more. I know I could. Just
Top
going
Gun.
down, Top Gun, just everything. It was just like Hollywood was just killing it.
Yeah.
They were just like, oh, you want another awesome movie that you can go see with the whole family? Boom, here you go. Here's a little on the tail end of it. Yeah, we just kept this one kind of in the back. This is Princess Bride for you right here, right?
Yeah.
They just don't do that anymore.
Do you feel like you could really? You and I, though, were not old enough to truly appreciate it when it was actually happening, though. Do you think?
See, I had older siblings, so I lived a lot of it vicariously through them.
Yeah.
And I was always sort of hanging on to their coattails, nipping at their heels when it came to pop culture kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's definitely something you had in your favor.
Yeah.
That I did not, being the oldest.
Yeah.
In my family, and also living in Germany in the mid '80s, I kind of missed out on a lot of that.
Yeah.
So
had hadn't been for that darn Berlin Wall, living under communism, man.
I'm telling you, I'm so glad that I have you in my life to introduce me to all that awesomeness. Because it is. I mean, the 80s were a truly magical time.
Yes.
Don't even get me started on the music.
Yeah. Oh my. Well, yeah. That's the other thing I was going to say. It was equally awesome in terms of music during that time period. I mean, it was just like there was no like, especially with music. Like you think of music today, and it's so like. You got people who like rap over here, and you got people who like, like the radio pop over here, and you got people like R&B over here. And it's also like, segmented into different groups. But back then, it was just like, oh, Bruce Springsteen's going to go do his thing and release Born in the USA, and then Michael Jackson over here is going to do his thing, and everybody's going to like them both.
Everybody loved all of it. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, and you go back and listen to those records now, and they're still classic.
And you got Aerosmith, and they're doing their thing, and the power ballads, and it's like, man.
Yeah, and you got, Tears for Fears in there. I mean, you could just go down the list. You could just start checking them off, baby. I mean, U2's releasing the Joshua Tree, and I mean, just forget about it.
It's amazing.
Forget about it. You can't do that anymore.
No.
It just doesn't happen. For all that technology has given us, it's just those were magical times.
Absolutely. Speaking of magical times, we need to discuss some Tolkien. We need to talk about some Tolkien.
We need to talk some Tolkien here. We can get very diverted when it comes to pop culture matters. All right, so that's enough of talking Tolkien. We're going to talk some Tolkien now. All right.
For real,
confused yet? All right. This is the part where we actually talk about the thing we said we were going to talk about. All right. I do want to give a little plug for my post on this chapter. I'm doing this little beginner's guide to the Silmarillion over my blog.
Yes.
And these are like each chapter is like, this is like these take the podcasts on each chapter take like an hour, but these, you could read in like 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, it's very like straightforward, and it's just supposed to be something you go read and you're like, okay, now I know the framework for this chapter. Now it's all going to make sense to me when I read it. But I want to say that one of the things I do on every post is I try and use a piece of Tolkien-inspired art that's out there to help illustrate it that I feel like is a really exemplary piece of art. I want to say it, the one that's on this piece this week, I need to show this to you, is of Aulë, and it is awesome. It's by somebody named Nahar Doa. You can link to their DeviantArt profile if you go to my blog and then click on it. But check that out.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, you got to see this thing. I mean, if you're listening and you hadn't seen this thing,
wow,
it's pretty awesome,
dude.
You know what's really cool about this? Like check out his arms. Zoom into his arms right there. You see?
Yeah.
Look at his arms. He's got like runes on his arms.
Oh, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Wow. That's wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is, and that might be the ultimate picture of Aulë right there. You just have to see this thing. It's really cool.
And I gotta say, that's not really how I pictured him, but now that I see him like that, I'm like, oh yeah.
He looks mighty.
That's how he's supposed to be.
Yeah. I gotta go back and check this guy's work and see if he's done some others of the Valar.
Yeah.
I think he probably has, but anyway, check it out. Check that out. So let's talk Aulë and Yavanna. We're going to start off with Aulë, though, because he's the first half of this chapter on Aulë and Yavanna.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, what do you think about the origin of dwarves? What do you think about the origin of dwarves here?
It's interesting having read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and then now to be going back and reading the Silmarillion. I feel a little bit like I'm doing things in reverse. But it's really interesting knowing what I know of dwarves from those books, from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then going back and reading this and be like, yep, that's exactly where dwarves should have come from.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense.
What makes sense about it to you?
Well, when you think of the dwarves, they are such a rebellious, tough little culture,
Uh-huh.
and they just have this attitude about them, and you can't figure out if you should like them or not, because part of them is really lovable. Like Bombur is just, like hilarious and goofballing it all up all the time. But then you have other dwarves that are just downright mean and, hurting people and, doing whatever they want without thought for other people. And you're like, I don't like you very much. So I can never make up my mind if I like them or not. So, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, given that they were basically the result of Aulë's impatience and of his own kind of form of rebellion. Right. It makes sense that will have been passed on, in a sense, to the dwarves. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and let's talk a little bit about Aulë's rebellion, all right? So why does he create the dwarves?
Because he was impatient, right?
Yeah. Impatient for what?
He wanted the children of Ilúvatar to come. Yeah, he wanted to meet them.
And that's really interesting because, if you remember in the Ainulindalë, it talked about them entering, I think it was Ainulindalë, it may have been Quenta, but it talked about them entering into, the Valar entering into Middle-earth, into Arda, because for love of the children of Ilúvatar, because they wanted to basically help matters along and develop it and see it come to fruition. There was very much this spirit of, these are our like little brothers, little sisters,
Yes. Yes.
And we want to show them how cool things are,
Yep.
And really open up this world to them.
Right.
And Aulë gets impatient, and that's why he makes the dwarves. Some of the things, some of the notable things is he made them in secret. Even the other Valar didn't know what he was doing because he was afraid that they might blame him for what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So. But there's something, I think there's a very important contrast that's going on here, and that's that Aulë is set up against Melkor here in a very key way. Did you pick up on that? Like just contrasted, in terms of themes with Melkor here. Mm-hmm. Because Aulë gets found out, right? He makes the dwarves, and then Ilúvatar is like, what you been up to? Mm-hmm. It's this very kind of like...
It's like God in the Garden.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's like God with Adam, right?
Adam, what have you done?
Yeah, right. And so what is Ilúvatar getting on him for, and what's Aulë's response?
Well, I think Ilúvatar is basically like, why did you do this? Why don't you trust me? Why do you think that your way is better than mine? Mm-hmm. And then Aulë basically said, well, I didn't do it to piss you off, mm-hmm. right? He's just like, I didn't want, like, I wasn't trying to make myself better than you. It's like, I wanted something other than me. I wanted something other than I am to love and to teach. And I feel like his motives were good. And so I'm going to cheat because I noticed that you actually have a little note written in the margin here, and I think this is what you're getting at.
No.
That as opposed to Melkor, Aulë desired something other than himself.
Right.
To love and to teach. It was so his intention was a giving intention.
Right.
It was wanting something other than himself, whereas Melkor wants domination and to be in control of everything.
Yes.
Aulë was like, I just want to share the love.
Right. He just wanted to share the love, baby.
Yeah.
There's lots to go around. What I find, he says, I did not desire such lordship. Mm-hmm. I desired things other than I am, to love and to teach them, so that they too might perceive the beauty of Ea, which thou hast caused to be. Yeah, and Melkor was all about domination, right? He wanted to increase his own part for the sake of his own glory, right? That's what we learned from the Ainulindalë. That's why he was making the horrendous sound during the music of the Ainur, because he sought to increase his own part.
Right.
Aulë, for that matter, he just wants to share. He wants to share all of this goodness, and he wants somebody to share it with. It's almost like Aulë, in a way, is basically saying, like, dude, Ilúvatar, you made me this way. Like, I want to share all of this cool stuff with somebody else.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't want to offend you, but here it is. And the important thing is that Aulë says, hey, if I truly messed up that bad, then I will get rid of these things. But before we get to that, there's something really cool that that is kind of subtle here, but I wanted to bring out. Ilúvatar said one of the problems that Ilúvatar mentions to Aulë is that thou hast from me as a gift thy own being only, and no more, and therefore the creatures of thy hand and mind can live only by that being, moving when thou thinkest to move them, and if thy thought be elsewhere, standing idle. Right? Mm-hmm. And so what Ilúvatar is basically saying there is, look, Aulë, you're my creation. You have your movement. You have your, what does he call it? He says you have your being. Yeah, you have your gift of being from me only, right? Because I'm infinite. Because I'm the original. Because I'm the creator, right? I am the source of being. Therefore, you're contingent upon me, upon something infinite, right?
Right.
But for these creatures that you created, these dwarves, they are contingent upon you, right? Who are a finite creature. You're great, but you're still finite, right? Exactly. So when your mind and your thought move elsewhere, they're going to just stand idle, right? They're not going to have their own like free freedom, in a way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
do you read that the same way?
Yeah. In fact, I had noted in the margin that the dwarves were not divinely inspired.
Right.
That they didn't come from the mind of Ilúvatar, so they are not, they're in a sense they're inferior.
Well, but remember, everything does come from the mind of Ilúvatar originally, right? Even like with Melkor, right?
Okay.
He says, and it's mysterious because you can't quite attribute evil to Ilúvatar, but the dwarves aren't evil. The dwarves are just, Aulë was not supposed to make them. I don't know. Does that qualify them as evil? I don't know. That's an interesting discussion.
Well, I said that in a way they were inferior. You would disagree. Are they inferior?
Are they inferior? That's an interesting question
because
too.
Because they didn't come directly, and I kind of feel
because you're saying and so that's okay. I see what you're saying. The distinction is that the children of Ilúvatar came from the mind of Ilúvatar, not through the Valar, not through the Ainur.
Exactly.
But the dwarves did come from one of the Ainur.
They did come from one of the Ainur, but they weren't part of the original themes, right? They weren't. They weren't. So I guess they're not like almost. They're not. It's almost like they're not direct descendants. That they're kind of like this other branch, this other kind of weird thing, and I do feel like I think one of the reasons I struggle with the dwarves, whether to like them or not, is I feel like they conduct themselves with this chip on their shoulder all the time, like they're out to prove something. Mm-hmm. And it could be that maybe they feel that they are inferior, that they're not, that they do have something to prove because the way they came into being was different than the way the other creatures came into being. I don't know. It was just interesting to me. Just kind of that dichotomy that may have been created by the way the dwarves originated. Yeah,
it raises interesting questions.
It does. Yeah.
But the bottom line is that because they receive their being from Aulë, they're not quite going to live up to what the children of Ilúvatar will. But as we see, Aulë goes on and he says, hey, he's ready to smite the dwarves that he created and get rid of them if Ilúvatar says that's necessary. Mm-hmm. But Ilúvatar had compassion upon Aulë and his desire because of his humility, right? Humility, right, as opposed to pride there.
Yes, he was willing to sacrifice.
Yep, and so Ilúvatar says, thy offer I accepted even as it was made. Dost thou not see that these things have now a life of their own and speak with their own voices? else they would not have flinched from thy blow, nor from any command of thy will. So even as Aulë is ready to get rid of them, if Ilúvatar says so, Ilúvatar has already given them their own being, right? Has already given them from his being, so that they are now not contingent upon Aulë anymore, right?
Okay.
So they're not reliant on him to live and move and breathe. So good news for the dwarves.
Yeah.
But what else do we learn about the dwarves? You remember?
What else do we learn about them? That he made them strong and...
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Because they were going to be... It says, since they were to come in the days of the power of Melkor, Aulë made the dwarves strong to endure, fast in friendship and in enmity. I can't say that word.
Enmity. I know that's a hard word to say.
Enmity. And that there was going to be strife.
Mm-hmm.
There was going to be strife between thine and mine. I thought this was interesting. The children of... This is Ilúvatar talking, right?
Yeah.
That there will be strife shall arise between thine and mine, the children of my adoption, and the children of my choice.
Yes.
So he's calling the dwarves the children of his adoption, right? And then obviously the children of my choice would be the elves and men.
Right. And for now, so the dwarf, it's not like Aulë creates the dwarves, Ilúvatar gives them their own being, and then they just go out and start populating the world before the elves arrive. Ilúvatar says, "Hey, they're going to go sleep until the elves come." Right? Your creations are not going to go before mine. Right. So,
yes.
Ilúvatar remains a little bit of pride of place for the elves. And yes, there is strife between the elves and the dwarves in many ways. They really aren't very fond of one another, and probably a lot of that goes back to something of their origins.
I'm sure it does. Yeah. And as I was reading this, I was reminded of the whole Ishmael and Isaac story from the Bible.
Good one. Yeah.
And that whole issue arose out of Abraham's impatience. Right. And and it came to the point where he sent Ishmael away. And so it seems like there was a lot of similarities between this and then that situation.
Yeah, definitely a lot of similarities. Let's see, real quick on.
The other thing we learn about them. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It says that they Ilúvatar says, "Yet because thou hiddest this thought from me until its achievement, the children will have little love for the things of my love. They will love first the things made by their own hands, as doth their father, who is Aulë, right? And they will delve in the earth, and the things that grow and live upon the earth they will not heed. Many a tree shall feel the bite of their iron without pity." Right. So they're not going to have much respect for.
So you're actually jumping ahead a little bit because we're getting into the section with Yavanna there. So
I'm sorry.
Let's go back. No, it's okay. We'll pick up on that. We're gonna take a break in just a moment and come back to that. But I wanted to mention the description so if you go back to page 44, that last full paragraph. Since they were to come in the days of the power of Melkor, Aulë made the dwarves strong to endure. Therefore they are stone-hard, stubborn, fast in friendship and in enmity, and they suffer toil and hunger and hurt of body more heartily than all other speaking peoples. And they live long, far beyond the span of men, yet not forever. Aforetime it was held among the elves in Middle-earth that dying, the dwarves returned to the earth and the stone of which they were made. Yet that is not their own belief. For they say that Aulë, the Maker, whom they call Mahal, cares for them, and gathers them to Mandos and halls set apart, and that he declared to their fathers of old that Ilúvatar will hallow them and give them a place among the children in the end. Then their part shall be to serve Aulë and to aid him in the remaking of Arda after the last battle. So a lot of good stuff in there, just about how the dwarves are and why they are kind of stubborn but fast in friendship. You think of Gimli and just the way if he is so like he may be easy to take offense, but he also becomes he's definitely like he's the kind of guy you want to have on your side in a fight.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because he is so like loyal, and he's just gonna bear down and kick some tail for you if you need him to. So I just like that description, and that explains some of why the dwarves are the way they are. They were made, and Aulë was not looking at the grand scheme of things. He was thinking Melkor is this bad dude, so I better make these guys hardy, right? And so he did, and that's why that's very much why they are the way they are. But it's also just kind of funny too to think that Aulë made them in anticipation. He had seen a vision of what the children of Ilúvatar were going to be like, and so it's like he was like, you could like picture him like holding his eyes, like trying to remember, like closing his eyes, like trying to remember, okay, what was it? How exactly they look? And it's like, here it comes, and it's like not quite the elves, not quite the elves, not quite these tall, lean, beautiful, flowing creations, not like these supermodel figures, but more like, squat, stocky,
long bearded,
long bearded, stubby guys, right? Wrestlers, rather than swimmers, right?
Yes.
Or something.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, there's some very subtle humor, I think, going on here, and it's just funny to think about the dwarves almost being this mistake.
Yeah.
That's really, I think, one of my favorite takeaways from this early part is that the dwarves, in some sense, are a mistake. They're an attempt to make something like the elves, and even like men, but not quite living up to it.
I had not thought of that, but I get it now. But
I also like the thing where the elves say that the dwarves go back to the stone from which they were made. So there's that like looking down on the dwarves, right? From
almost
the elves.
like a caveman thing.
But the dwarves are like no, we have our own super awesome place set aside in the halls of Mondos for us, and in a way the dwarves are kind of the underdogs, and so you tend to like that about them.
That's true.
Your heart does go out to that guy who is like, he's so loyal, and he's always going to be on your side, and he's going to stick up for you in a fight. He's going to be a good friend if you need him to be a good friend, and so there's something very lovable about the dwarves.
There is. For some reason, Rudy just pops into my head.
Yeah, I can hear that.
That's kind of, not that Rudy was a mistake. Absolutely not. The movie's amazing, even if he was offsides. But yeah, you just think of that guy, right? He's the underdog. Your heart goes out to him because he wants it so bad, but he's just, not quite tall enough, not quite big enough, but he has so much heart.
But the dwarves did do some amazing things.
They did. Absolutely.
So.
Middle Earth would not be the same without dwarves. That is a true story.
Absolutely not. But interesting little twist there with dwarves. All right, we're going to take a break and we'll come back. We got more. We'll talk about dwarves a little more as we talk about the rest of this chapter. We'll talk about Yavanna and Aulë, and the origin of Ents and of eagles, and a few other things when we come back. Don't go away. Do you know the tale that Tolkien called the kernel of the Middle-earth mythology? Beren and Luthien is the story of an outlaw mortal and an elvish princess tasked with obtaining a Silmaril, one of the holy jewels of the Blessed Realm, from the Iron Crown of the Dark Lord Morgoth. In my new book, Tolkien's Requiem, I explore the legend of these doomed lovers. In doing so, I aim to provide a backdoor into the world of the Silmarillion for those who have struggled to give it a go. One of Tolkien's greatest achievements, the story of Beren and Luthien, deserves to be as well known as The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Get your copy of Tolkien's Requiem today by visiting truemyths.org/Beren. That's truemyths.org/BEREN. Happy reading! All right, and we're back. So we left off. We had just talked about Aulë and the creation of the dwarves.
Yep.
Now we're ready to talk about Yavanna and her response to that, and what becomes of that. So, on one hand, you have Manwë and Varda, the happy couple who together, Manwë sees further and Varda hears further, when they're together, and then you've got Aulë and Yavanna. Things not going quite right between Aulë and Yavanna here, as we see. So it's mentioned Aulë hidden the whole thing from the Valar, including his spouse Yavanna. And so Yavanna said, Eru is merciful, now I see that thy heart rejoiceth, as indeed it may, but thou hast received not only forgiveness, but bounty. Yet because thou hiddest this thought from me until its achievement, thy children will have little love for the things of my love. They will love first the things made by their own hands, as doth their father. They will delve in the earth, and the things that grow and live upon the earth they will not heed. Many a tree shall feel the bite of their iron without pity. So Yavanna is basically like, hey, Bubba, like, it's good that you made these things, but it would have been nice if you talked to me first, because now, guess what? Since we didn't collaborate on them, your little fellas here are going to be pretty mean to my peeps, right? To all my stuff, right? That sounded very, I don't know, that didn't quite sound... As I was saying those things, I was like, shut up with that weird way of putting all of this, right? But
you couldn't help yourself.
But I couldn't help myself. But basically, Yavanna is saying we should have collaborated. Because we didn't collaborate, there's going to be some consequences for the things that I love. Right. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So.
Which are the things that grow.
Right. Which are the things that grow.
Yeah. Trees and flowers and vegetables.
Yeah. And Aulë's like, well, it's going to be true of all the children of Ilúvatar, right? They're going to all have this sort of response to the things of the earth. But Yavanna, she's not quite with that response.
Right. She's like, I don't think so. Not unless Melkor darkens their hearts.
Like he'd ever do that.
Like he'd ever do that.
Melkor darken their hearts? I mean, come on. We are talking about the same Melkor here, right?
Yeah.
Gosh. So maybe a little bit naive of Yavanna to say, but she does go, and she goes and appeals to Manwë. She
She does, yes.
It's interesting to me that all of the Valar, you think like they're all among the Ainur, they all were created by Ilúvatar.
Right.
But really to interact with Ilúvatar, they have to go to Manwë, right? Kind of an interesting little point there. What do you think that is? Any thoughts on that? Look like no, but...
Well... I hadn't thought of that, but it's, I don't know, I don't want to get too Catholic, but it seems like, but we know Tolkien was Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, well, obviously Manwë is some kind of intercessor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So a representative.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think there's a sense in which Manwë is just, Ilúvatar gave the world over to them to do with it, to achieve as they would, right? And he's watching. He knows how everything's going to unfold, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's kind of like when you, with your own kids, when you give them something to do, you could try and hold their hand through everything, or you could try and actually get them to coordinate, and maybe by having to go like with Manwë and like work with Manwë and have him be the guy who coordinates everything. That way, they are more cohesive as a group, right? Maybe they're more cohesive as a team because of that.
Yeah, because they have someone to help unify them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have someone to tell them how it is and how it should be. And
right. And he's able to make mistakes. Manwë is not like, he's not perfect in the sense of being all-knowing or anything like that. He obviously knows a lot. He's the greatest of the Valar. But, so just an interesting point that they always have to go to Manwë if they want to talk to Ilúvatar. So she goes to Manwë, and she says, King of Arda, is it true, as Aulë hath said to me, that the children, when they shall come, shall have dominion over all the things of my labor, to do as they will therewith? And Manwë says, it is true. For why dost thou ask? For thou hast no need of the teaching of Aulë. And she says, my heart's anxious. My works are dear to me. Melkor is already causing enough trouble, and now you're telling me that the children of Ilúvatar are going to be causing trouble from my works too? And what does she name as her works? Did you pick up on this? Were you able to read and figure out from the descriptions what her particular works are?
I thought it was the trees.
Yeah. Well, so she lists the Kelvar, and then which can flee or defend themselves,
and the
Ulvar.
In the index.
Oh, nice.
I did, but now I can't remember what it said. But I remember being like, "Oh, that was helpful."
Yeah.
Kelvar. Yes, I did look this up. Okay, so a Kelvar is an Elvish word. Animals.
Yes.
Living things that move. And then the Ulvar are, I think, the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Growing things with roots in the
yes.
earth. So you have the things that move, the animals, and then you have the things with roots, the trees.
Yeah, and Yavanna's saying, hey, they all have their worth, and the Kelvar can flee or defend themselves.
Right.
The Ulvar that grow cannot.
Right. Yes, because they have the roots.
And then she says, among the Ulvar, I hold the trees dear. Right. The Ulvar are kind of the greatest of, or the trees are kind of the greatest of the Ulvar. Long in the growing, swift shall they be in the felling. Mm-hmm. They take forever to grow, and then you just put an axe to them, and
they're gone.
Those dwarves and their axes are just going to take them down. Mm-hmm. So of course Tolkien loved trees, and so I think you can hear a lot of Tolkien coming through in that word. It is, we have that beautiful oak tree in our backyard, and it is. It's a glorious tree, and there's lots of beautiful trees out there, and it's kind of crazy to think how it can take so long for that tree to grow, but then somebody just comes along with an axe, or you have a bad storm, and can get ruined. Yeah. There's a little bit of tragedy in that.
There is, and they have no way to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because they have no way to defend themselves, she says, would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things that have roots and punish those that wrong them. And Manwë says, this is a strange thought.
Talking trees?
But here's the thing. Yavanna says, it was in the song. For while thou wert in the heavens, and with Ulmo built the clouds and poured out the rains, I lifted up the branches of great trees to receive them, and some sang to Ilúvatar amid the wind and the rain. Right.
Yep.
So Yavanna is arguing that, hey, there was this thing that maybe we haven't thought about too much in the music.
She's talking about the theme, right?
Right.
She's talking about one of the themes, yeah.
Right. When you and Ulmo were off working with water, this is what I heard. And so Manwë contemplates this some, sat silent, and the thought of Yavanna that she had put into his heart grew and unfolded, and it was beheld by Ilúvatar. Now, that's interesting. So Manwë is like sitting there, and Ilúvatar beholds his thought.
It's like a prayer.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that before till just now. But yeah, it is kind of like a little prayer or something. In a way that he's contemplating. He's going back and he's thinking. He's going into his mind palace.
His mind palace.
That's right.
There it is.
Then it seemed to Manwë that the song rose once more about him, and he heeded now many things therein, that though he had heard them, he had not heeded before. And I love that. That's very meta Tolkien right there, because you think about that, and here's Manwë going back and thinking about the song again, and he's realizing, I never realized that was in there again. And then what are we doing? We're going and we're reading the book, and we're being like, oh yeah, remember that time back then when in the last chapter when this happened,
Yep.
So meta Tolkien right there.
Yes.
I think this is kind of an easy little passage, this paragraph, to just kind of rush through till you get to the interesting stuff about eagles and Ents. But that's very important. I think Manwë, maybe this serves to answer more that question, right? Of why do they all have to go to Manwë? Because maybe Manwë has this special gift of contemplation. Maybe he's supposed to be this priestly figure.
Yeah. He's been given a special gift of wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at last the vision was renewed, but it was not now remote, for he was himself within it, and yet he saw that all was upheld by the hand of Ilúvatar. And the hand entered in, and from it came forth many wonders that had until then been hidden from him in the hearts of the Ainur. So he goes back, and because of this contemplation, Ilúvatar rewards him with being able to see more things in the music than he previously had seen. And one of the things he sees, to his delight, is eagles. Did not thy thought and mine meet also, so that we took wing together like great birds that soar above the clouds? That also shall come to me by the heed of Ilúvatar, and before the children awake, there shall go forth with wings like the wind the eagles of the lords of the west. So, first of all, we've got the eagles coming into the picture as a way of kind of keeping the children of Ilúvatar in check, right? Of ensuring that they don't get too crazy with all of their cutting things down and that sort of thing. And then we get the Ents, right?
Yes.
Nay, he said, only the trees of Aulë shall be tall enough. In the mountains the eagles shall house and hear the voices of those who call upon us. But in the forests shall walk the shepherds of the trees. So, the Ents are the shepherds of the trees.
Yeah.
And they've existed since well before even the children of Ilúvatar. Right? And they came about because of Yavanna's insistence, because of her desiring to provide protection for the things of the earth, for the things that grow in the earth.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I got excited when I heard that in your little introduction that this was we were going to learn about the Ents, because I was like, I thought that's what that was about.
Yeah.
I even scribbled it in the margin. Ents? ?
Right.
Actually, what kind of tipped me off to it was this section where it says, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Olvar, and some will dwell therein, and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared. I love that scene in the, I can't remember. What movie is it? Is it...
in the Two Towers?
The Two Towers. Where the Ents just go like, rah!
Yeah,
and they just start running, and they're like, just wreaking havoc on the... I remember who now, but I just remember that I was like, dang, don't cross the Ents.
Well, and one thing I read in one of Tolkien's letters as I was doing a little more research into this chapter was, and he doesn't mention, I don't think he mentions this here, but the Ents have power over stone. And you think about that, like one of the cool things about a tree is how it can, over time you'll see tree roots growing up and like breaking stone, like breaking through stone, and it's like this power of this slow invisible growth. And Ents have this like incredible power to break stone, which you think of stone being very hard.
Yes.
But Ents have this ability to break things that are unbreakable for the children of Ilúvatar without, these great weapons. They can just break them with their hands.
Wow.
So he gives great power to the Ents. And it's important because they've got a big job to do, taking care of the trees.
Yeah.
The Ents, shepherds of the trees.
Yep.
So Yavanna returns to Aulë, who was in his smithy pouring molten metal into a mold. Who knows what he was coming up with this time?
Man, you gotta keep an eye on that guy.
I know. He's just a maker.
He is. He's a hyper creative.
And she says, "Now let thy children beware." Oh, I've been off, and I got a little news for you. Let thy children beware, for there shall walk a power in the forest whose wrath they will arouse at their peril. And then that last line, jerk. Nonetheless, they will have need of wood, said Aulë, and he went on with his smith work. Yeah.
Oh, man. I think Aulë might be sleeping in the doghouse after that conversation.
Yeah, Aulë is kind of a knuckle dragger, I think. You know? He's just kind of... I don't know. That comment to me is just really funny. He is very much like a dwarf. He's just like I don't care. They're still gonna have need of wood. He just goes back to his work. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know that he really means that much by it, but it's like, you know, if he had said that to you, you would have been like, jerk. You know.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's it says a lot about his character, for sure. And it's funny. It's like, you know, she's like, you better watch out. Like, your little people better watch out because, you know, I got some kick-ass things that will come after them if they try to hurt my stuff. And he's like, I don't care, you know?
Right.
Like, so what? Like, my guys are tough and stubborn and they're going to need wood, so
right.
Deal with it.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, he looks like a knuckle dragger in that picture you showed me that's on your website too. So
yeah, well, he looks a little less like a knuckle dragger. Maybe he just looks like he'll kill you. You know, if you cross him there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess he just looks like he looks like a guy you don't want to cross.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But I like that Yavanna is standing up to him. Like,
yeah.
I like that she didn't just like, oh, my poor trees, and like go and cry with, you know, who is it, Nessa or whatever the Warner girl is?
Nienna.
Yeah. You know, at least she went to Manwë instead of having a pity party with Nienna. You know, at least she tried to do something about it.
Right.
You know, and she did. I think this is, you know,
well, it also
do something pretty great.
It also makes me wonder if, you know, that's why Yavanna likes to spend so much time out and about, is because, you know, Aulë, you know, even though they're supposed to be spouses, like, they don't really get along very well.
Right. Well, Aulë just seems to just, like, want to do his own thing. But,
right.
You know, he doesn't seem to really... Yeah, I'm not saying he's not a caring individual. He probably is. But it just seems like he's just, you know, has other things he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you know, too many things, too little, you know, not enough time. And, you know, his Yavanna comes and tries to, you know, start a little... something with him. He's like, whatever, go away.
Go away.
You know?
I got stuff I'm working on right now.
Exactly, and my men need wood, so...
Yeah.
So there.
They will have need of wood.
Nevertheless, they will have need of wood.
Yeah.
So unless you expect them to be able
Don't tell me my business, devil woman! Yeah.
Oh, man. Good stuff.
Good stuff. Alright, well, quite a fun-packed chapter, you know, and I do. I like that. I like that chapter a lot because it's got a little bit of a tinge of humor running through it in many ways.
It does, and you really start to get to know you know, familiar things start to come up, you know,
right.
Things that you know about. And you're like, oh, that's where they came from.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, good stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think
All right.
I already said that.
Well, we can say it again.
Say it again.
Great stuff. Like Tony the Tiger.
That's
right. All right.
That was another 80s thing, wasn't it?
It's still going strong.
Still going strong, but I think it started, you know, with all that other awesome 80s pop culture.
All right. Well, let's not drag it out with talking about every breakfast cereal that you ever ate as a kid.
I want Frosted Flakes for breakfast tomorrow.
Well, okay.
You won't have any.
You won't have any, and roads are icy.
Roads are icy. Darn it.
All right, let's end this thing.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone. You have been listening to Talking Tolkien, and it'll be a couple episodes, I think, before we get around to Chapter 3. We're going to be looking at... we got a couple of little special interludes coming between now and then, but we'll get to Chapter 3 here in a couple of episodes. So keep on staying tuned, and hey, subscribe. And... If you want to, go leave us a rating at iTunes or wherever you download from, and let the world know what you think about Talking Tolkien.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Please remember to check out truemyths.org for show notes as well as other Tolkien goodness. Next time, we will be taking a break from our Silmarillion discussion in order to discuss my reasons for creating True Myths and the other media associated with it. I hope you'll tune in. That's it for now. Thanks for listening.